Hey, Pat McCardle here with Polaris for another episode of Shop Talk. We've gotten some questions on why would you want to buy a Turbo R versus a Pro R. So we're going to give you a quick hit list on what some of the top things are in each one that might sway you one direction or the other. So let's jump in and start off with the Turbo R. Coming over, when you look, both these machines are 74 inches wide, so they both live in the wide open segment for RZR. The beauty of the Turbo R is that it's got a bit shorter wheelbase on it at 96 inches versus the 104.5 on a Pro R. So that makes it a lot more nimble in the trails. So when you're back east or some of those areas that are maybe a little tighter and you like zigging and zagging around a little better, Turbo R is going to be a better fit for you. As we look up in the front end of this unit, the all-wheel drive systems are actually quite a bit different between the Turbo R and the Pro R. Turbo R runs the classic on-demand all-wheel drive system where you've got a simple one button, flick it up, and you're engaged, all-wheel drive's ready to go. The way that works on a Turbo R is that you need a little bit of slip out of the rear wheels, then the fronts engage automatically. Both of them come on when you need it. So you can run this thing in all-wheel drive all the time pretty much, and that front end will hook up when you need it. But note that the rear tires always do spin just a little bit faster than the fronts. Pro R's a little different, we'll get to that in a little bit. As you look at power band on these two units, this is where it's a lot different, right? Turbo R obviously has a turbocharger in the back of the motor here, right in the front of the engine on the exhaust. That's going to give you a great mid-band power setup. So if you're used to running, say, an XP Turbo or a Pro XP or a Turbo S, the Turbo R is going to give you a lot of that power delivery feeling that you're used to, whereas the Pro R is going to be a little bit snappier depending on which throttle mode you're in, and we'll talk about that in just a minute or two here. As we look at some of the technical riding that you might do, and you think about the back end of the Turbo R, it's actually got one of the deepest low gear ratios that we've ever put into a RZR at 35.37 to 1 in low. So when you clock this thing down into low gear and you're going up through rocks or getting into the mud, you're going to be able to really modulate that throttle and keep this thing spinning at an easy pace without having to worry about revving to the moon. Both of these units, we do allow the use of a Polaris approved 33-inch tire over the stock 32s, which you can see mounted to this vehicle right here on a set of beautiful Pro Armor accessory rims as well. Nice thing about that power delivery as well when we're talking that turbo is it's going to be good when you're going up, mountain passes or getting up into high altitudes. So when you think about it, as you have that turbo, when you climb up, the air gets thinner, you generally lose power. That turbo can actually compensate a little bit better. So as you're climbing up the mountain pass, the Turbo R is actually going to do a little better at maintaining its power level as you climb elevation versus the naturally aspirated Pro R. And the last thing that we want to talk about here is, when you look at just the strength upgrades on the Turbo R, when you compare it against the older Turbo S that it replaced, we've got the one-piece chassis, we've got the massive beef that you've seen in some previous episodes when you look at suspension, some of the driveline upgrades, the shocks, the cage has been improved, all the new styling of this model. When you think about the Turbo R, this thing is in great shape to make you really happy, whether you're doing technical riding or blazing through the trails. Now, let's jump over and talk a little bit more on the Pro R and why you might want that. All right, so now we're going to hit up the Pro R. Why would you want this thing? Well, starting off, if you look at that wheelbase, from front to back, you got 104.5 inches, right? So this thing is stretched out, which is going to make it great for those wide open desert and dune terrains where you got big rollers and whoops that you're going to be working your way through. As we think about, power, obviously the four-cylinder, huge 225 horsepower is great, but one of the cool things on this, if you look on the dash here, is that there's actually an extra switch mounted in the middle here that's all about throttle mode. So as you flip it all the way down, you've actually got kind of your standard sport mode. That's what you'd be used to riding on a RZR as far as how that throttle pedal reacts with the engine. When you bounce it to the middle, this is going to be great for rock crawling and technical riding. All the way up, you get the checkered flag, which is going to be your race mode. So the instant you touch that throttle pedal, it's going to spool up and throw you back in the seat and get you moving. When you think about other things that are different on the front drive of this unit, it's actually a brand new system in the Pro R that's unlike any other RZR we've had. In this case, your switch has actually got 3 positions. So all the way down is going to be 2-wheel drive, locked rear end like you're used to on other RZRs, just like the Turbo R. When you flip it up into the middle, you're actually going to get all-wheel drive with an open front differential. So think one wheel in the front's doing work. This is going to be really good for like high-speed riding when you're cruising trails and you don't need all 4 wheels hooked up. And when you flip that switch all the way up, you're going to get a true full lock 1-to-1. So the rears and fronts are spinning at the same speed. So when you think about getting into real technical terrain like rock crawling, mud riding, or maybe even in the snow, that's where that's going to really shine. Easy part on this is that, switch is on the left side just like it is the Turbo R, but again, you got 3 positions instead of 2. So you get to pick whether you want the front end to be doing nothing, be in an open configuration or fully locked. When we think about strength, there's a huge amount of upgrades on the Pro R as well. So we talked about suspension. A lot of that's fairly common in the front end between the two, but the back has actually got extended trailing arms, bigger shocks, and more travel. When we look at the roll cage, this is a fully welded one-piece cage. So yes, the cage still bolts to the chassis, but the entire roll structure is one piece on the Pro R, unlike the bolted together unit that the Turbo R is on the cross braces. So what that means is this actually ships from the factory with the roll cage installed. That's not something that gets done at the dealer. That's done at the Polaris factory on the Pro R. As we keep going down, we've got a stronger drive line. We've upgraded the shafts, we've upgraded the gearboxes, we've upgraded the front drive, the rear drive, the transmission. Pretty much everything on this drive line has been beefed up to handle the bigger power of the 225 4-cylinder motor. And then on the cooling side, we've got the biggest radiator we've ever put in here, but you can also see up front that the hood has actually got these openings on the side. And that's actually to draw air in for the clutch box to get more cooling back to the belt. And we also pull air in from the side to cool the back side of the sheaves. So I'm gonna actually take a minute, pull the seats out and the access panels, because we also hear from a lot of people, how do you get to the belt cover to be able to swap a belt? So it's pretty simple actually. So the first thing you do, pop one of the seats out, work your way around to the other side. And if you got 2 people, it's a little bit easier because you can have your buddy help you out. But get the second seat ripped out of there as well. Then you got some toolless fasteners. So on the top here, there's 4 that you got to twist counterclockwise till they pull out. On the bottom panel, you got 1 on the top on either side. And then if you open this storage bin, there's actually 2 in the middle. So you leave this part connected to the lower panel. So once we got the tops, get the belts out of the way. Upper panel comes off pretty easy. Get that out of the way. And then we've got the clips. So remember, 1 here on either side, and then 2 in the storage box here. So this rear panel should slide right up and out of the way. And just like that, you've got access to your clutch cover now. So you can see here, the clutch spreader tool is built right into the cover, so that makes it easy to find. You've got bolts where you need a 10mm, wrench or socket on the top half. But then the bottom half are actually toolless, so you just flip them halfway around. So all the ones on the bottom are super easy to get off, and then your belt's right under here. So when you look at dual path clutch cooling, you've got the air coming in from the front on this hose here that's feeding right into the outside of the driven clutch. And then up on that side on the back, we pull an air in right down here to actually the stationary side of the drive clutch. So when you look, we're flowing air on the back side of the clutches and on the front side of the clutches, and then the outlet is right over here dumping down onto the transmission. So super easy access. You pop the seats, just remember, keep this little panel attached to the lower, and then it's really easy to get everything out and put it back together when you need to. All right, so there you have it. A handful of reasons why you might want to buy the Turbo R, or you might step up to the Pro R. There's great machines. For a lot of people, you're gonna love the one you buy. So make the right choice, but you got some more info on which one's the best for you. All right, make sure you click to like and subscribe, leave some comments down below, and we'll see you next time on Shop Talk.